It's going down, and you're invited for what they selling. We ain't buying, there is no running, there is no hiding, there's only fighting or dying. It's going down, and you're invited for what they selling. We ain't buying, there is no running, there is no hiding, there's only fighting or dying.
It's Going Down is a digital community center from anarchist, anti-fascist, autonomous, anti-capitalist, and anti-colonial movements. Our mission is to provide an autonomous and resilient platform to publicize and promote revolutionary theory and action.
Go to itsgoingdown.org for daily updates. Check out our online store for ways to donate, and rate and follow us on iTunes if you like this podcast.
My name is Lexis Figuereo, Saratoga Black Lives Matter leader in Saratoga Springs, New York.
Just to kind of get us started, take us back to the early days of the George Floyd uprising in your area, broadly speaking. How did things play out on the ground and things start happening?
How things turned out with that, I ended up there was a protest that got set up by some high school students and some different people in our community. They ended up having a march. I decided to go out there and try to be a part of that. I never had been involved in social justice work before then, but I tried to be a part. Ended up being in the front of that march, just so happens coincidentally. And from then on, after that event, nobody was really doing any protest or anything in Saratoga Springs. I decided to organize the event myself, actually. Me and one other person who was one of the other organizers put together a big event. And, we ended up having at that event 300 people or so, and in a community where there's only 2% Black people. It's a good following and a good event. We obviously were met with, in the beginning of the movement, I would have to say, like you said, we weren't met with as much hostility. And I'd have to say the first event or so that we had, we actually were in the streets for altogether. We had 2 events back to back. We were in the streets for about 4 hours straight, shutting down the streets. Nobody got arrested or anything like that. So that's how it started.
So what drew you yourself personally into getting involved in organizing demonstrations and just taking part?
What really drew me was, in Saratoga Springs, there was a death of a young Black boy, in 2013, August 31st. He actually didn't die then. He actually ended up in a coma with lack of motor skills or anything like that. And it was after a police chase, after a night out at the bars in Saratoga Springs. And we've never had an investigation into his death. He ended up succumbing to his injuries about 6 months later. And, the family hasn't had any answers. The community hasn't any answers. Now this is, it was 7 years later. And we're out there, screaming for Daryl Mount, which is his name. That really drew me into this. At the same time as George Floyd, it brought up Daryl Mount's name again, and really shined a light back on this story. And besides that, my parents, my dad's an immigrant. My mother went to school for poli-sci, African American studies. I grew up with reading about the Black Panthers and learning about a lot of African American history and revolutionaries. So I always wanted to be a part of that, but I never really stepped foot in it. But, George Floyd's death really pushed me to get out in the streets and really make a change. But when it comes down to, organizing and all these things, it honestly just happened. I don't know why. Obviously, it was my calling to be doing this. But, I had no intentions on doing this or being where I was at when we first put that event together. I actually wasn't supposed to be speaking at the event or anything like that. I just put it there so people could come together. The person ended up getting sick and not being able to be there. So I ended up speaking and taking interviews, and it honestly just went natural from there.
I don't know if you want to speak more about just the different groups that we'll be kind of talking about, maybe a little bit of the police, kind of like what the area is like in general. If there's any other context you want to kind of lay out for us.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. I mean, and not to make this just about myself, but, me personally, when I was 11 years old, that was the first time I was arrested, in Saratoga Springs. And it's actually for truancy. I was on a PINS order, which is a person in need of supervision, through the school and through the county, and city. So I ended up actually dealing with police at a real young age. And, at 11 years old, I was met with hostility from the police officers. Because, there's not that many black people or minorities in this area. There's a lot of times that people are treated very different. And it also, it's a very, rich, prominent area. So, if you're not rich and you don't have the money, you get treated very different. And, we've dealt with, racism, even right before 2020 and 2018, there was people putting KKK flyers on people's windows. We had people putting Confederate flags over the jockeys in the lawns. So people have, and there's plenty of stories, including different family members of mine and friends that I've grown up with, who, have been treated with, less than human, by the police officers, plain and simple. And, the police right now actually are under investigation, for the Attorney General's office, because of some of their misdoings that they've been doing. So, people are looking at this and they're keeping eyes on this.
We're going to turn now and talk about what happened in April of 2021. And there was a demonstration, and then there was an encampment that got set up outside of, this is the Albany Police Department, right?
Yeah, it's about 30 minutes away from Saratoga.
Take us back to that moment and just talk about kind of like what caused that encampment to kick off, and then we'll talk about kind of like what all happened, because people were out there for 7 days, and from the photos, it looked like it was pretty cold outside during the time.
It was indeed. Well, we were out there for the murder of Dante Wright, young black boy out of Minnesota. And we also have Adam Toledo as well, who was murdered as well, within that same few days. We ended up deciding to, we did a protest every single night for Dante Wright and for Adam Toledo in solidarity, and against police brutality and over policing in our neighborhoods. So what we ended up doing was, there ended up being a march one day. We had already been to Albany for the last 3 days before then, even the night before, Arch Street, which is, where we were at, we ended up getting, met with disdain and, a lot of anger from the police. There was maybe at this protest, there was maybe, 15, 20 of us maybe. And we were met with at least like 30 officers coming out in riot gear, with holding big cans of bear mace, ready to arrest us at any time, literally for doing nothing but exercising our rights. So then take you to the next day. There ended up being a march from Townsend Park, which is in Albany. They end up marching down to the South Station, which is where the encampment took place. I actually personally wasn't at the, march, so I can't speak too much on exactly what they did there on the march. I know they did a nice peaceful march on the way to the police station. I joined the group because my sister actually was a part of some of the organizers that put together this event. And when we were in front of the police station, we were out there. It actually was the day after the marijuana legislation was passed in New York State. So we were out there. We ended up actually in our former protest, we were going to start like rolling up marijuana, smoking, hanging out and playing music. And that's about it. That's what we planned on doing. It turned into that, to the police, grabbing their lights and stuff. Like somebody had a light. The cop grabbed his light. Then they locked the door to the police station. Then they come out, end up knocking people over, trying to come in and out the door. They come out in riot gear. And at one point, what ends up happening is my sister actually gets up on, there's a little, off of the stairs. There's like a awning on the other side to where you can stand on the side of the stairs. She was standing there and she's screaming people over property, to the police. So the police are, acting very aggressive, with their batons and everything that they were doing. And when she starts saying people over property a few times, eventually, there's this officer named Devin J. Anderson. He ends up grabbing her bullhorn out of her hand. And when he grabs her bullhorn, he doesn't just grab it. He shoves it into her mouth first and then pulls away. So he ends up busting her mouth open. So, I watched my little sister's, face get bust open in front of me, by police officers. As soon as that happens, chaos happens. The police start, hitting people pushing people down with batons, spraying us all with bear mace. And, it gets real crazy at that point. On the police side, when their aggression, even more. And, they end up spraying people. They had to at least bear mace at least 25, 30 people, even people that were just standing around on the side. So, it got ugly.
Do you want to talk about just kind of like the day-to-day stuff that happened? Because the people were out there for a whole week. What was that experience like, just occupying that space?
Yeah, man. I mean, it was crazy. It was dangerous. Like you said, it was cold. We actually, I like to say we seen, all 4 seasons, within that week, because it was sunny one day, it rained one day, snowed another day, ice one day. The weather was crazy, but definitely, dangerous for sure. We ended up, we had to have fires out there to stay warm. We had tents out there to be able to sleep. We also had, a bunch of clothes and warm things for people, hand warmers, everything you would need. We also had PPE equipment and all that stuff. But what ended up happening also is that, where this station is located is in the downtown, and it's right next to a few different homeless shelters and things like that. While we were out there, we ended up having a lot of community members actually in all different restaurants and different local businesses supporting what we were doing, because they knew that what the police were doing was wrong. So they ended up sending us pounds and pounds of food and fresh food from restaurants and drinks and clothes and blankets and all types of things like that, necessities. And so what we ended up doing in turn is, there was the homeless population right there. We offered, fresh clothes to the homeless. We offered a warm place for them to stay, because there was a lot of times at these, the places that they were there, that we were near, that, they were very, Christian based, shelters that, if you came in there a little bit drunk, or if you came in there and you were LGBTQIA plus, or you were anything that, didn't align with their values, they would turn you away. So, we don't turn anybody away. So we were able to, feed people. We were able to, clothe people. We were able to give people shelter, and a warm, safe places to stay. And there was a lot of, love that ended up coming out of this thing at the end of the day, because everybody's out there. We're out there with some people who we didn't even know from the community, strangers who, were out there, risking our lives, together.
Were things like George Floyd Square in Minneapolis, was that an inspiration to what was set up there? And like people were setting up so-called autonomous zones in different cities or protesting encampments. Were you all looking at that and trying to replicate that, or did it just kind of happen organically?
Honestly, just happened organically. We didn't plan this at all. It's crazy, how it happened. Like I said, we honestly planned on, smoking our weed and going home. I honestly, even though I'm like a leader and all this stuff, and I'm very big in the movement, that day I was tired and I didn't even want to be there, I honestly wanted to, make sure my sister was safe, which is what I was there to do, and go home. But, that's not what happened.
Well, let's talk about what happened when the police evicted the encampment. It was violent. They attacked people, correct?
They did. They came through. What they ended up doing was telling people, they said that we had, they actually said that there was some chalk on the walls. They said that they were having, the city workers come and remove the chalk, that morning. That morning I happened to end up leaving, to go and see my daughter. I had been out there for 7 days, with everybody else. And, I was like, I need to see my kid. So went to go home. And then I get a text message from people that are saying, we see horses, cops on horses, and we see them in riot gear, and we're getting a call now saying that, they're going to come into the encampment and have a conversation with us, blase. What ends up happening is the police come there about, I don't know, at that time I would have to say for protesters, there was maybe, I'll say 15 to 20 protesters, including onlookers who were just there. And there had to be at least 40 police officers, in full riot gear, batons and all that stuff ready to go. And let it also be said that most of the people who were there were women or femme presenting, or non-binary folks. There were barely any cisgender men or anything there. So, they purposely came through at a certain time, and a lot of the leaders had left, for a little bit to take a break. And, they ended up giving them 15 minutes, to remove all of our tents. If anybody has ever seen a video or anything of what was going on there was at least, 15 tents and fires and all types of stuff going on. Impossible to move in 15 minutes. They told them 15 minutes. They ended up giving them more than about 5 minutes, before they started, jumping the gates. Cause at that time they had the whole police station gated up, which they chose to do. We never tried to, occupy that, space or get into the police station. But, they decided to do the dramatics and make us look dangerous and scary by putting gates around the police station. But yeah, they just came through, 5 minutes later after a 15-minute warning, and started demolishing people's tents, knocking them down, dragging them. We're talking about people who weren't resisting arrest at all for standing there, hitting them with their batons. On certain videos, you can see somebody literally hitting somebody, smashing down with their baton, and destroying all our property. And like I said, we had a lot of property that was there, that people were giving us, not including our own personal property that we had there. So I would have to say, an excess value of $20,000 of property that they literally destroyed. They literally came through with a dump truck, and threw all our stuff, all our belongings, all our livelihood, into a garbage pail, and hauled it off. And, they ended up arresting at least 12 people or so. And, they made sure that they grabbed up all the leaders that were out there. So that's what happened at that point.
So after the encampment was evicted, there was a series of more protests that broke out in July. And then there was arrest that took place, from our understanding, in September of 2021 that followed. Can you tell us about how that period kind of started? How did the police start targeting Black Lives Matter organizers?
Yeah, I can tell you. And let me bring it back real quick, back to Arch Street. On the day of the encampment, there was a protest that evening, on April 22nd. On April 22nd, while cause we came out there protesting because the police officers had lied to us, not telling us where people were at. We had no idea where people were being held at. People's families were very worried about them and their safety. So we went out there, we had our protests. We were actually met with the police officers, covering their badges. There were at least 80 police officers in riot gear, all around the police station, covering their badges with tape. They all had tape on there. They also had Blue Lives Matter, strips on their shields and on their batons, and on their shirts. So, they were coming out ready for war, against protesters. And while I was, saying my speeches and doing my stuff, I actually went to go do a few interviews and go back to my car to grab gas mask and, everything for everybody, because they were literally gearing up as they were about to gas us with tear gas. I go to my car and, I look behind me to my side, and all of a sudden a unmarked vehicle rolls up, with 4 white males. They hop out the car. And at that point, I have no idea who these people are. They didn't identify themselves as police officers or as FBI agents or anything like that. And they ended up, slamming me down to the ground, eventually telling me I was under arrest. And I was carted off to, the central booking and then the Albany County Jail that evening. And they were trying to get me out of there, cause they didn't want me to be able to, speak to the people and, do what I do. And so they got me out of there and they ended up hitting me with, attempted a riot charge for that day, for the 22nd, attempted riot charge for, the 14th, the day that the protest started, unlawful assembly and, obstruction of governmental administration. So that's where the charges started for me. And like I said, all the other people had already got charged, earlier that day. Then the move from there is that in Saratoga Springs, we had a protest in July, and that was regarding, our city council member, which is a public safety commissioner. We have a commission style government in, in Saratoga Springs, which is a very different style of government, to where these 5 people pretty much run the whole city. You have a public safety commissioner, you have a public works commissioner, you have a, commissioner of finance, commissioner of accounts, and a mayor. So the commissioner of public safety, ended up putting on a special, meeting and a special press conference. And it was in regards to, some violence and uptick of violence in Saratoga Springs. Now, to put it into context, Saratoga Springs has about 1% of violence, overall, of any kind of crazy violence. So it's not a place where there's a lot of violence that normally happens. But during that time, there had been a brawl, out on Caroline Street, which is where the bar scene is out here. It's a crazy bar scene. It's a horse racing town and a gambling place. So it's definitely a place where it does get a little bit crazy at the same time. and the assistant police chief, and the public safety commissioner did this press conference in which they ended up telling us, blaming BLM for the uptick on violence, blaming BLM for everything that was going on, pretty much saying that we were bringing on this, national level stuff that was going on with policing, that doesn't exist in Saratoga. Although the people of Saratoga Springs have, been saying, the exact opposite. We've been marching in the streets and having this movement going on since 2020. It's 2022 now. The movement is still alive in Saratoga Springs because of, the people knowing of the racism that happens here.
Seen a whole lot of people want friends. Seen a whole lot of people want bands. Seen a whole lot of people can't get what they want, so a whole lot of people pop stands. They say the means don't justify the ends. Did the ends ever justify the means? And will we end all of this hardship if we just put rich biggest in the guillotine? Really? Oh, cigar rolls blows on the warfield. Whole world torn, but I'm more chill. Told the doc I don't need more pills. I need more Skrilla, not more bills. And that ain't even me trying to get fly. That's just really Reed trying to get by. Everybody wanna live a good life, even when we caught up in the hood, right? Some be bopping like it's slow-mo. Some be mobbing with the fofo. Some be sitting try to meditate. Some don't walk cause they levitate. Some don't hawk, just elevate. Some don't talk cause they hella fake. Some don't stop but still ever shine. Play the back when in the moon time. Fade the black then it's goon time. Blaze the track and it's a new rhyme. You got passion, it's in due time. Same glasses with some new wine. You've been asking but you do know. Without actions how can you grow? I see you pushing out the concrete. Did you ever know your roots? RD? I'm so proud of myself, that's just how I feel. I do my dance all in the mirror because I am real. And everybody want the negative, I wanna chill. All of this shit that I've been through done turned me to steel. And I'm so focused right now, ain't playing no games. I have been through all the sorrow and tasted the pain. Enemies trying to stop me, I won't say their names. I won't give them the fame, I'll put two in their frame. Seen a whole lot of people want friends. Seen a whole lot of people want bands. Seen a whole lot of people can't get what they want, so a whole lot of people pop stands. They say the means don't justify the ends. Did the ends ever justify the means? And will we end all of this hardship if we just put rich biggest in the guillotine? Really? Oh, cigar rolls blows on the warfield. Whole world torn but I'm more chill. Told the doc I don't need more pills. I need more Skrilla, not more bills. And that ain't even me trying to get fly. That's just really Reed trying to get by. Everybody wanna live a good life, even when we caught up in the hood, right? Some be bopping like it's slow-mo. Some be mobbing with the fofo. Some be sitting try to meditate. Some don't walk cause they levitate. Some don't hawk, just elevate. Some don't talk cause they hella fake. Some don't stop but still ever shine. Play the back when in the moon time. Fade the black then it's goon time. Blaze the track and it's a new rhyme. You got passion, it's in due time. Same glasses with some new wine. You've been asking but you do know. Without actions how can you grow? I see you pushing out the concrete. Did you ever know your roots? RD? I'm so proud of myself, that's just how I feel. I do my dance all in the mirror because I am real. And everybody want the negative, I wanna chill. All of this shit that I've been through done turned me to steel. And I'm so focused right now, ain't playing no games. I have been through all the sorrow and tasted the pain. Enemies trying to stop me, I won't say their names. I won't give them the fame, I'll put two in their frame.
All of these talking points are just like something you'd hear out of the civil rights movement from like a racist sheriff or something.
Yep.
These people coming in here riling up people and stuff. It's disgusting. Sorry.
It is. No, you're good. So you're good. So we end up, so after they do their press conference, and in their press conference, he pretty much makes it out to be the assistant chief, which is Chief Catone. He ends up making it seem as if you're not with the police, you're against them. So pretty much if you're with us, you're against them. And if you're against them, they're going to stop our narrative. That's what his last words that he said in that press conference was, we are going to stop your narrative. You have to stop doing this to our police officers. You're not going to keep on saying that we're racist. We're a good community, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, I've lived there since I'm 7 years old. I'm 34 years old right now, and I've experienced racism in all shapes and forms since I was 8 years old in Saratoga Springs. These are true things. But after he did that, we already get enough death threats and everything else, in the mail and, over the phone and via social media. So, we were very angry that he was blaming us for violence and putting us more in a predicament, and pretty much telling us that we're not going to be able to protest. We're not going to be able to do anything we do. He's going to stop us. That was on July 6th or so. By July 14th, we had a protest, about this. So on July 14th, actually, while we were out there about to start our march, there was actually, and I actually forget about this a lot of times on news interviews or any interviews, that the PBA put out an announcement at 4 p.m. We end up hitting the streets around 4:15, 4:30. They put a announcement saying, begging the Saratoga Springs police to allow them to do their job and, uphold justice, which pretty much means come through and bash heads. When we hit the streets, the first thing we seen was, the police officers were already there in riot gear and ready for us. That was before the protest even started. There had to be at least 30 officers and I'll say at least 15 cop cars lined up the street. We ended up starting our protest. We went past them. They ended up knocking us down that moment. But by the end of the protest, when we were about to wrap up, the police, they give us the unlawful assembly speech, blah, blah, blah. You got a certain amount of time to get out the streets. In that time, we start backing up and we start walking back towards Congress Park, which is where the protest started. In that time, the police officers just run at people, and just start tackling them, random people. And the weird thing about it is they run past like a lot of white women and white people who are standing there, allies. And they actually go in and grab all the black people they can grab, plain and simple. So, they're slamming people down, 3 to 4 officers on each person. And, they were just showing us exactly what, the Chief Catone had already said that they were going to do. They're going to stop our narrative and stop us. So that's how that protest ended. In that evening, I mean, it's crazy. In that evening, then, people were then pulled over. We had 2 groups of people who were pulled over, their cars illegally searched, and they were actually like pulled out of their car, separated from each other, after leaving from the protest. And people were scared. They just gave our protest against police brutality. And were just met with batons, and then they get pulled over, and get their car searched and get asked to step out of the car for literally doing nothing. One of the people were told they went over on the yellow line one time. And the other person, they had no reason to tell them why they pulled them over. They actually one person said that they looked suspicious because they went back to their car and came back to the protest at one point. That's what happened from there, man. And then we're going to if you want to go to September. After this time, we always go to city council meetings. So we're always very vocal at these city council meetings. And best believe after, I think about 6 or 7 of our, protesters and activists were arrested, that evening, best believe we were at that next city council meeting and not too happy about what's been going on in Saratoga. We were met at the city council meetings with, and we have been met with, 5 or 6, sheriffs and a few different SSPD officers, Saratoga Springs Police Department officers, standing in front of the building and inside the building and pretty much policing us to even come inside the building to go to a city council meeting, which is a public meeting that anybody's welcome to. Those meetings end up turning into argument matches between the city council members and community members. We ended up being removed out of the meetings, being threatened with arrest, at both of those meetings. Then on September 3rd, we'll go to Albany. I'm telling you, this thing is crazy. When we go to Albany, September 3rd, I go to court. I get rearrested for more charges from the April 14th protest. They add on 3 attempted assault charges, which is crazy, and at that time, there was maybe 2 people who still had their cases still open. Everybody else had an ACOD, which means that if they don't get in trouble for 6 months, their charges are dismissed. Or they ended up getting a plea to a disorderly conduct, which isn't a crime or anything like that. Just a $120 fine. And I was one of the only ones that at that time, and then after, was the only person that still has any charges open and have the most charges from this protest, which is crazy. I happen to be one of the most vocal people, when it comes down to interviews and all this stuff, and it comes down to be out in the public and leading things. So I do believe, this isn't done without malice, in any way whatsoever. We had people that were arrested for, riot charges, first degree riot charges, felonies. They ended up getting dropped down to to misdemeanors, and then from there to disorderly conducts or ACOD. My charges still stick, with attempted riots, which are misdemeanors. I have no felonies. So they added those charges on there. So now I'm facing 7 charges in Albany, for Arch Street, which is kind of crazy because, that's about 4 months after the protest that they added these charges on. And then on September 7th, I proceeded to get pulled over in Saratoga Springs, on my way to my public criminology class, at UAlbany, which is the University of Albany, New York. 'Cause I was going to school, for law. Go figure. I get pulled over by 2 sheriff deputies, and when I say 2 sheriff deputies, I mean 2 cars, for a simple traffic stop. My traffic stop was to say that, I had, a leaf in my window, the little trees, similar to the same exact one that Dante Wright was, killed for. They then told me that I had a warrant, from Saratoga Springs, asking what the warrant's from. They refused to tell me, kept me in the car for an hour. Unfortunately, my children, my 2-year-old and my 6-year-old, had to witness this. Their father being handcuffed. And then they actually had to proceed to go to the police station to follow me to make sure that I was safe. They were with their mother, to make sure that I was okay. So my children were exposed to seeing all this. When I get to the precinct, the reason why they're telling me I'm booked, they wouldn't tell me for a long time, but it was for disorderly conduct. So like I said, no crime, no actual misdemeanor or anything like that. A violation, which is, similar to a ticket. So, I ended up getting into the police station for that. There was a warrant signed, apparently, for my arrest for that. And that was due to the protest that happened in July 14th. So we're talking about 2 months later, somebody being pulled over by 2 cop cars, for a violation. And, that turned crazy because after that, people end up coming to the police station to support me. And it was the mother of my children came there to support me. They wouldn't let her inside the police station to see if I was okay. 2 members of my group of Saratoga Black Lives Matter leaders, they weren't able to come in. And what ended up happening actually was, and one of the leaders of my sister, what ended up happening is that the police came to the door, while they're out there waiting to try to get in here to see what's going on with me. The police say, you come with me, to 3 people. And they're like, what's going on? They're like, yeah, we have a warrant for your arrest. So they end up grabbing them in forcefully, including the mother of my children. She ends up getting caught up in the mix. She didn't even have a warrant for arrest. And my 2-year-old is inside a stroller at this point, and the station's on a hill. They snatch her from my daughter. My daughter's screaming and crying for their mother. And my son is crying for his mother, my 6-year-old son. And they literally watched their mother get arrested and get pulled away from them, for nothing. And, that's how that day ended up turning. I ended up staying in the cell for about 8 hours for, once again, a violation. Then by the time I came out, they had added 2 more charges to me. They added a charge for, blocking the governmental administration, for one of the city council meetings. And then they added another blocking of governmental administration for another city council meeting, which once again happened a month and a half ago. And we have been in public places and in public city council meetings and supporting people's courts, in this time.
They literally charged you with blocking a government building at a city council meeting?
Yep. I got 2 charges for, blocking governmental administrations for 2 city council meetings. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Are there other examples, and maybe we'll talk about this later, but are there other examples of really just targeted arrests of Black Lives Matter activists? They're obviously just trying to just throw whatever they can.
There is. And one of the weird, so even with that one, after that, they actually they ended up saying that they had an open investigation on, Saratoga Black Lives Matter and our protests. So they actually end up making all together. So I told you about the 3 people that were arrested plus me. They end up arresting 13 individuals besides that. They end up grabbing them up. One person gets grabbed while he's making a pizza delivery at his job. He goes in and makes his pizza delivery, comes out to his car to cops, while he's in the middle of working, gets hauled off to jail. And I would have to say for him was a real big target. He was actually running for, some kind of a county seat, in our local legislation. So, the targets are crazy. And they're not done, without literally knowing what they're doing. Like, this isn't just a, coincidence at all. So like I said, just for the July 14th protest, 17 people were arrested, for our protest, 2 months later after our protest. So, that was crazy. On January 6th, there was some craziness that happened in our capital. There was a Trump rally. People ended up going out to the Trump rally. I went there, supported it. One of my friends was involved and, they were involved in a big scuffle that ended up happening between the Proud Boys, actually. The Proud Boys were there. And the Oath Keepers and 3 Percenters. They started, one of them went to go tase my friend, and, a brawl ended up going out. They ended up jumping my friend. It was more of them than us. At that time, there was maybe 6 of us, 7 of us, and then maybe 20 of them. I was actually in my car looking at this because I literally had just got there just the moment that the violence ensued. It ended up being that a Proud Boy ended up getting stabbed. 2 Proud Boys ended up getting stabbed, in the mix of somebody trying to defend their life, from these other people. None of the Proud Boys were arrested for doing anything. The Proud Boys had assaulted people. The Proud Boys, even, one of them hit a woman in her face with a, flagpole, and we just see the bias and the stuff that my friend is probably going to going to prison, for, defending, his friends and family, from white supremacists. That happened. A lot of people got arrested on our side. I think they made 1 arrest, on the Proud Boys, which was literally months later. And that was because we were making a big deal about it. But besides that, nobody was arrested besides Black Lives Matter protesters. The crazy thing is, after that happened, they had ended up putting tape up there to, tape away, the area or whatever for evidence, after the brawl. My car happened to be parked, right across from where the tape was. And I actually happened to leave my car on running when I hopped out the car to make sure everybody was okay. When the brawl started. So, I walked past the tape real quick to go to my car. That ends up turning into, I'm over the tape, and there's videos of this too. I'm over the tape for about 15 seconds. At least 10 state troopers literally just stampede me, and slam me down on the ground. And I get arrested, cut my face up. In the mix of this, my friend's trying to make sure I'm okay. They end up slamming him up, trying to say that he was trying to resist arrest and trying to, get in the middle of my arrest. So, I ended up getting arrested. I actually caught 5 charges that day. So that was the start of my year, last year, January 6th, exactly a year to the day. I ended up with, getting my face cut open. I got a sprained arm, and a sprained thumb as well. So yeah, and my friend ended up getting hurt, getting his whole face scraped up. So, I mean, we can see the aggression, that's literally targeted at Black Lives Matter protesters. We had some of our other comrades who were at a protest in Schenectady. They did some chalk on the wall, at the police station. And were literally arrested about 3 weeks later on warrants for chalking a wall for chalk. Like, we're talking about waterproof chalk. I mean, not waterproof chalk that literally comes off with a little splash of water, and they charged them for that. So yeah, we're seeing this craziness happen everywhere. And this is in the capital region, which is in this area, with Saratoga, Albany, Schenectady, New York, and Troy. It's been crazy.
And where was the incident with the Proud Boys at?
So that was at the Capitol in Albany, West Capitol Park, which is where all the legislative buildings are.
How did people respond to all these arrests as these arrests are going on and there's all these intense charges? Was there a campaign to support y'all, or just talk about that aspect?
There was a campaign, and people, we really depend on independent media and media like this, for sure to, boost out these things and to let people know what's going on. The main thing was getting the word out. We definitely had campaigns of, contacting DAs, contacting the Attorney General's office. That's how we ended up getting the investigation of SSPD, rolling. We we really have been having a lot of support with all this stuff. And, even people who don't go to rallies or anything like that, they've been supporting when we have a mutual aid event, which we haven't been able to do recently because of the cold. But, people are really supporting this because, they know wrong is wrong and right is right. You should be able to speak and you should be able to exercise your rights, plain and simple.
What role did far-right media play in trying to demonize Black Lives Matter activists in the area? How did that play out?
It doesn't help our cause at all to have right-wing media, and we have a lot of right-wing social media things going on, social media groups. There's a group called Movement Saratoga Forward, which is actually a group that's been trolling us since literally the first March. If you go on their site, you're going to see some sick stuff, and you're going to see nothing but videos of me and my group, and every single move we make, talking about us and lying about things and making things exaggerated and making us to be violent. Like I said, it definitely puts us in a predicament where you have, these people who are looking at it as, these people are coming here to, burn our neighborhoods or kill our kids and all types of craziness. And that's far from the truth. Like I said, we literally have mutual aid events and do things that will bring the community together, and give out free food and things like that. Then we have a spokesperson, which is funny because the spokesperson, Bob Gilson, which is the officer, he actually just got promoted, as an assistant chief, while they're under investigation from the Attorney General's office, right now for civil rights violations. He has said so many times, pretty much, we respect their rights, but we have to respect the rights of diners and the rights of this and that. And, there's no right to dine. I never read that any amendment or anything that says there's a right to dine, but there's a right to protest. There's a right to free speech, the right to free press. It doesn't help at all because you have people who are saying, they're playing with the community's minds, to make them fear us, fear mongering, to the fullest.
For sure. And also inviting violence from groups like the Proud Boys.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about how the New York State Attorney General's office got involved. There was an investigation into the police targeting BLM protesters with excessive force in November of 2021. How did that all play out?
Yeah, man. We ended up, we had started the campaign. We had people reaching out to the AG's office every single day, all day. We kept on posting it up. Hopefully people would support. People did support it, a lot. And, we ended up having conversations, certain activists, myself, I did, and a few other people. We had conversations with the Attorney General's office, a few different people in their different offices, different departments about various issues that we've been dealing with the Saratoga Springs Police Department. Even before now, July 30th of 2020, there was a Back to Blue rally. There was 500, Back to Blue guys and about 100 of us, if that, and which ended up turning out to maybe 60 of us after the rally was settling down. We ended up getting shot at with pepper bullets, tear gassed, and, unlawfully arrested and all types of craziness that night as well. So, we had brought up all these different things that were going on in the police department. And eventually, it didn't take long actually for them to get on it. We also had, it helped a lot that we had the New York Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, all making posts every day, about what Saratoga Springs Police Department was doing. We also, we're not stupid people. We have people from the New York Lawyers Guild, lawyers that are literally with us at almost every single one of our protests or meetings, to make sure that, we're doing everything we need to be doing and that everything is recorded. So we had testimony for them. So, that's an open investigation right now. And that's still going on.
What's currently happening with your case and other BLM organizers? We understand that things are still ongoing. You're still going to court. Just catch us up to speed with that.
When it comes down to court cases, for Saratoga Springs, pretty much most court cases all got either ACOD'd or dropped down to plead into a disorderly conduct, things like that. There's one organizer, there's maybe two other organizers that have open charge right now. We've been calling for them to drop the charges. They've been reluctant to drop any charges, even though they know that, even the reason why they're on their investigation right now is because of these charges and because of the way they were pursued. But, they're going to still keep on going with it. So, people are still going to court. Seems like, most people end up taking deals. There may be one organizer that's going to be taking going to trial with us and, going forward with it. When it comes down to me, I have three different, dockets, which is 3 different cases in Saratoga Springs. I have the 2 separate city council meetings, and I have the July 14th protest. Right now we've been going back and forth. We haven't even put in motions yet or anything with my case. No motions that went in. And actually, my lawyer had a big problem getting our discovery, which is all the information that the prosecutor's office has against me for my case. We had a lot of problem even getting any of the information, so things keep getting delayed and getting delayed. So I don't think that my motions even have to go in for another 2 or 3 weeks. So we'll see what happens with all that stuff. In the meantime, we're going to call for them to, drop the charges. We'll see what happens. And then in Albany, my case has been going on since April, so almost a year. No trial has started. They offered me a plea deal. The plea deal they offered me was 3 months in jail, 3 years of probation. I feel that's a far cry from the people who were able to get disorderly conducts and get ACODs and things like that and get the charges dropped and dismissed. But for some reason, it seems that they're keep on trying to push for my charges no matter what we do. So we're trying to keep on fighting to get the DA to drop these charges. It's actually David Soares. I don't know if you guys seen, but David Soares just dropped the forceful touching charges on former Governor Cuomo.
You're listening to It's Going Down, part of the Channel Zero Anarchist Podcast Network. Follow us online at itsgoingdown.org and on Twitter at IGD_news. If you like and appreciate this podcast, go to itsgoingdown.org/shop and give us a one-time donation. Sign up to donate monthly or donate through Bitcoin. Again, that's itsgoingdown.org/shop to support. And now, back to the show. Well, we're recording this on the anniversary of the attempted coup at the D.C. Capitol to keep Trump in office. And, just last night I was listening to National Public Radio and they had somebody from the Republican Party on there. They just totally sidestepped the question of January 6th and they brought up the George Floyd rebellion. And they were trying to kind of paint this picture of like, oh, hardly anybody was arrested and they just got slaps on the wrist. Just coming from your perspective, dealing with all this, like literally getting charges from like going to city council meetings. And we know that there's been over 10,000 people that have been arrested since the uprising, and people are doing lots heavier time for, supposed crimes, largely involving property or people taking items from stores and stuff like that, which are all covered by insurance. I don't know. I'm just curious your thoughts, as the media kind of focuses on this day and the political parties really are trying to draw this parallel between people fighting against massive racist state violence and fascists that were trying to keep Trump in power.
Yeah, I'd have to say, there's no comparison to that, none at all. Like you clearly, like you said, you have people who are fighting for their lives, they're fighting for their livelihood. And, slavery is going on for hundreds of years, hundreds of years ago, you know what I mean? And literally and it went on for hundreds of years. And then we have, even in the 1960s, black people weren't even allowed to vote. And, black people were met with disdain and treated, once again, less than human. So yeah. The fights are nowhere near the same. And it's crazy. It's just like the fact to say that they're political prisoners, these people who are arrested. Like, you're not a political prisoner when you go somewhere and you're involved in a mob of people who are literally trying to take over a government building. Not just a government building, the government building. Like literally the government building, and trying to change and stop votes. That's crazy. That's insane. And it's crazy that they use that, this false rhetoric about Black Lives Matter organizers and what Black Lives Matter has done. Black Lives Matter, there has been times where there has been anger, there has been riots and things that have happened, for sure. But that's happened. There's been riots going on in this country for a long time. And they weren't always done by black people. There's been race riots done by white people, a lot of them huge ones. And the same way with the attempt to coup, the same way that they try to act like those things didn't happen either. It always seems to be that when a group of white people, mostly white people, decide to do something, the country's with it, and the country is going to support what they do, and they're really not going to go that hard for them. And for what I've seen, there was actually a person from up here who was seen smoking a joint inside one of the Senate offices, hanging out. And I'm pretty sure he got a disorderly conduct, so we see people who are definitely, and he was charged with like at least like 6-7 charges. He was never held in jail. He was never, pulled over with his kids. He was never, held in a cell for 8 hours or 9 hours. Any of these things are overnight. It's just night and day, in my opinion. And that's not even under a political view. That's just like, that's a fact of the fact.
For sure. Yeah. No, totally across the board. Well, for people listening to this, and they want to support, folks on the ground, in your area, they want to support you. Where can they go? Can they donate? Is there a place to follow on social media to get updates? How would you, instruct them to support you?
Oh yeah, we have a page called Saratoga Black Lives Matter, and that's going to be on all the platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well, and my page is L's Figuereo, ELZ, and last name Figuereo, and I'm on all the different platforms as well besides Twitter. So if you follow us to that, we got a link tree there, and it has all the information as well as petitions. Still have petitions for Daryl Mount, because we're still trying to get an investigation of Daryl Mount's death. So, anybody's welcome to, join our page.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. Anything else you want to go over? Anything else we didn't get a chance to touch on?
Thank you. I mean, I would say, I think we touched on pretty much everything. But, just the fact that, Saratoga is a place where protests have never happened like this before.
Yeah.
Ever, so this is crazy. And, the cops weren't ready for it. Nobody was ready for it. And I believe that in the beginning of this movement, they thought that when we had that first protest that it was going to be, let them get their thing on and, let them get their little joy, do their little parade. But 2 years later, we're still out here strong, continuing to make moves, whether we're in the streets or in the city council meeting or making moves in the, voting booth. We're here.
This has been the It's Going Down podcast. Check itsgoingdown.org for daily updates, columns, action reports, and news. Go to itsgoingdown.org/shop to support us and follow us on all social media platforms. IGD, your daily resource for insurgent proletarian life.